Welcome back. It's week 3, the final week of Parker Palmer's Let Your Life Speak. We're actually trying to do 3 chapters, chapter 4, 5, and 6. Unfortunately for us, chapter 4, we're going to probably skip most of it. Chapter 4 is a very good chapter, but it's a personal story about his own battle with depression and some of the things that he faced during that time. So I'll leave that for you to read because it is very interesting. I just think that we're going to have to skip it for the sake of time today. And we're going to sort of start over in chapter 5. Chapter 5 is about finding your way and leading from within. And in it, he tells this very interesting story that, again, it's one of the stories that you can find in this book that you can't find really anywhere else. He decided that one of his answers for breaking free of depression was to get involved with an organization called Outward Bound, which teaches leadership skills in the wilderness. And so this is his story about Outward Bound. I chose the week-long course at Hurricane Island off the coast of Maine. I should have known from the name what was in store for me. Next time I'll sign up for the course at Happy Gardens or Pleasant Valley. Though it was a week of great teaching, deep community, and genuine growth, it was also a week of fear. In the middle of that week, I faced the challenge I feared most. One of our instructors backed me up to the edge of a cliff, 110 feet above solid ground. He tied a very thin rope to my waist. And he told me to start rappelling down that cliff. Do what? I said. Just go. The instructor explained in typical Outward Bound fashion, no sort of explanation, no teaching, just go. So I went and immediately slammed into the ledge, about 4 feet down from the edge of the cliff with a bone-jarring, brain-jarring force. I just swung and boom, went face planted into the side of the cliff. So the instructor looked down at me and said, I don't think you got that quite right yet, Parker. So what am I supposed to do? The only way for you to do this, Parker, is to lean back as far as you can. You have to get your body weight at a right angle to the cliff so that your weight will be on your feet. You're going to swing out and you're going to bounce back in with your feet. It's counterintuitive, I know, but that's the only way it's going to work. Now, see, I knew that he was wrong. I knew that the trick was to hug the mountain, to stay as close to the rock face as I could because I was afraid. So I tried it again my way and slammed right into the next ledge, another 4 feet down. You're still not getting it, Parker. Okay, I said, tell me again, what am I supposed to do? Lean way back, he said. Take the next step. And the next step was a very big one, but I took it, and wonders of wonders, it worked. I leaned back into the empty space, eyes fixed on heaven, a prayer in my mouth, and made tiny, tiny moves with my feet and started descending down the rock again, gaining confidence with every step. I was about halfway down when the second instructor called from below, Parker, you better stop. What's right below your feet? And I lowered my eyes, and I saw that I was approaching a deep hole in the face of the rock. In other words, the cliff went from here back into here. To get down, I'd have to go around that hole, which meant I could not maintain the straight line of descent I had started to get comfortable with. I would need to change course and swing myself around the hole to the left or to the right. I knew for certain that attempting to do so would lead to my death, so I was paralyzed with fear. The second instructor let me hang there, trembling in silence for what seemed like a very long time, and finally she shouted up these helpful words. Parker, is anything wrong? To this day, I do not know where my words came from, though I have 12 witnesses to the fact that I spoke them. In a squeaky voice, I said, I just don't want to talk about it. Then, said the second instructor, it's time that you learned the Outward Bound motto. Oh, great. I'm about to die, and she's going to give me the motto. But then she shouted up 10 words that I hope I will never forget. If you can't get out of it, get into it. If you can't get out of it, get into it. Now, I find that to be a rather powerful story. That as we are listening to our life, there are going to be some moments where it's going to be like hanging from a cliff. Sometimes when we're really afraid. Aren't you afraid really to hear what God wants you to do? I know I am. Afraid to really hear God's instructions and voice telling you what the next step is or what you need to be doing. That's a hard thing to digest because it's never going to be as easy as just hug the mountain all the way down. It's going to be lean back and look at the stars and trust this rope to hold you. It's going to be something that requires faith. A long time ago, a guy told me, he said, if whatever God's asking you to do doesn't put you on your knees, it's probably not God asking you. It's going to be a challenge. To live into our vocation will not be easy. To listen to that voice is not easy. That's why so few people do it. But it is worthwhile to do it. And her motto, or the Upward Bound motto, is a good one. If you can't get out of it, get into it. That's what called people do. You know, Moses, we go back to him for a second. It wasn't an easy calling. Those people were contrary folks. I mean, from having to figure out how to provide them judges to figuring out how to get them food, it was never an easy group of people to work with. They were a contentious bunch. But he didn't go around it. He went into it. And that's what the calling does. The calling asks us to go further into something, to be deeply committed to it. Now, as he closes this book, Parker looks for the best, what he would call, I think, a metaphor for explaining how we need to approach life. And he uses the word seasons. And that makes sense. Spring, summer, autumn, winter. We all get seasons, and we all get how the seasons work, and that we are supposed to be growing and changing and being transformed, and that happens seasonally. And so he tells this story. Seasons is a wise metaphor for the movement of life. It suggests that life is neither a battlefield nor a game of chance, but something infinitely richer, more promising, more real. The notion that our lives are like an eternal cycle of the seasons does not deny the struggle or the joy, the loss or the gain, the darkness or the light, but encourages us to embrace it all and to find new opportunities for growth. All right? So you're 30, you're 40, you're 50, you're 60. It's an opportunity to grow. To live fully into what God has called you to do is an opportunity, a chance to grow. In a world where most people will not grow from the time they're about 25, you've got a chance to grow. If we lived close to nature, like an agricultural society, the seasons as a metaphor, in fact, would continually frame our lives. But the master metaphor of our era does not come from agriculture. It comes from manufacturing. We do not believe that we grow our lives. We believe that we make them. Just listen to how we use the word in everyday speech. We make time, we make friends, we make meaning, we make money, we make a living, we make love. I once heard Alan Watts observe that a Chinese child will ask, how does a baby grow? But an American child will ask, how do you make a baby? From an early age, we absorb our culture's conviction that we manufacture everything, reducing the world to mere raw material that lacks all the value until we impose our design and our labor on it. Now that is interesting, the difference between the word make and the word grow. Seasons imply that we are supposed to be growing. Making sort of implies that we are taking the raw material and making something. Whereas growth, really, we don't make our own growth. God grows us, all right? The Spirit renews us. Something happens to us, not us happening to something else. So, to live into this vocation, to experience this calling, is to recognize that one of the important things that we have to do to find it, discover it, and live in it is to grow. How do we measure growth? Well, in children, it's pretty easy. I mean, a child, you see them getting taller and you say, well, they're growing. Or even if you want to measure their intellect, you can ask them questions one summer and the next summer they actually know those questions and remember them and even are doing more than what you'd originally asked. You know, you wanted them to do 4 plus 4, but now they're doing 4 times 4. They're growing. But how do we tell if an adult is growing? It always has amazed me that some people think that any sort of evolution in their thought or any change is bad. They want to be the same today as they were in 1991. That's no growth. Growth means that we continue to evolve and change. I call it maturity. And it is okay to mature as a Christian. In fact, it is preferred to mature. And if we're going to listen to our life, if we're going to live into this vocatio, this calling that God has on us, if we're going to live out that calling, it's going to demand growth. We cannot follow this calling without growth. This was a quote I used, I think, week 1. It's from page 2. By all appearances, things were going well, but the soul does not put much stock in appearances, seeking a path more purposeful than accumulating wealth, holding power, winning a competition, or securing a career. I had started to understand that it is indeed possible to live a life other than one's own. No matter how successful he was, to live a life other than the one that was his to live was failure. You have to live into the vocation, into the calling that God has given you. You have to listen to your life. Now, this is challenging. It's hard work. It doesn't come overnight, but it is what we need to do. Now, listening to your life, I'm giving you some of the hints. I'm giving you some of the path. But it really is the hard work of trying to see what God has gifted you and is calling you to do and living fully into that. I'll remind you as I close that there was a story I used at the beginning about John chapter 2 where Jesus did all these miracles and the people came to him and said, "Let us make you king." And Jesus said, "No, that's what you want me to be. That's the path you've chosen for me, but that's not the path that God has chosen for me." So, we have to come to a place where we're willing to not listen to the voices of others. That's growth. To no longer listen to those voices, to discard some of those voices, and to listen to what God is asking us to do. That's hard work. Because that means that we're going to have to shed some of the things that we once believed, that we once held. It also means that we're going to hold on to some things too. But growth, real measurable growth as a maturing Christian, is going to mean that we're listening to what God is doing in our life. Hard work, isn't it? Well, all the best to you as you try to listen to your life and let your life speak.